Hey guys, Ron here, and recently I released a video about the Pokemon I think are the best of each type, and I made it abundantly clear that there is a difference between my favorite Pokemon and the Pokemon I think are the best. Now it's time to talk about the Pokemon I think are the worst, based on how terribly they represent their type, their design, lore, creativity, and battle prowess in extreme cases. While each entry has a different reason for being on the list, they fail majorly in one or many of these aspects. For example, my least favorite ground type is Claydol, but that's for very personal reasons. I actually think Claydol is a very good Pokemon based on what I want in a Pokemon, so it's not gonna be here, cause the ground type I think is the worst may actually be a Pokemon I like, but just so happens to suck at being a well-made ground type. But on the other hand, some of these entries may actually be decent representatives of their type, but clearly suck. In the end, this is still a subjective opinion because what I think makes a great Pokemon may not be what you think makes a great Pokemon. I mean, you get it, you're a good person, you know what's up. If you think there's a Pokemon that should have been here, chances are there's a reason they're not. If you want to see my least favorite Pokemon rather than the Pokemon I think are the worst, click this video. Now let's begin with the worst normal type. It's Delcatty. This was also kinda hard because there are a lot of relatively boring normal types, but that's kinda the point of the normal type, so being boring isn't a reason to detract points, but at least every normal type does something. It has an aspect that makes it unique and or interesting to use in battle, but Delcatty doesn't really do anything. That's kind of its thing actually. All of its Pokedex entries talk about how it's nomadic. Oh, this entry from Sapphire talks about this Pokemon in battle-related situation. It says, if the other Pokemon approach it as it sleeps, this Pokemon will never fight. It will just move away somewhere else. So what makes it anything other than just a cat with a neck pillow? I mean, it's not a criteria, but does it at least have amazing stats? Nope. I believe it actually has the lowest base stat total of any fully evolved Pokemon with a pre-evolution. Listen, I think Delcatty is super pretty, but when it comes down to it, Skitty is more memorable. And of course, this shows you that I'm not judging only based on how terribly the Pokemon represents the type, cause Delcatty is pretty normal, and my favorite normal type barely represents the type, but in every other criteria, like design and lore, Zangoose is better. In my opinion, the worst water type is... it's Finneon. Finneon's the worst. It's literally a fish, and honestly, water type was the hardest to pick. Every single water type looks like a water type, and even when they don't, they're pretty awesome, which really makes you understand that simply representing the type doesn't mean it's an okay water type. So the reason why Finneon is at the bottom is because it's the least creative water type. Even my least favorite water type Pokemon, Simipour, has very deep design traits that make it more appealing once you understand its origin, but Finneon is probably the least interesting water type. Even Luvdisc is cute and memorable, Finneon ain't. But after thinking about it, at least it evolves and Lumineon is slightly better, so I'm gonna make it tied with Basculin. Basculin has all the flaws of a Finneon, but when you train one, you don't get that little jolt of excitement when your Pokemon is evolving. Water type is the most abundant type, so don't blame me for picking two very similar Pokemon. The worst fire type is... Simisear. Now this is one of three Pokemon here that are actually my least favorite as well. They're really easy to explain. This guy's just the worst. Look at any other fire type and you'd understand that. I even got the science to back it up. We all know that it was voted the least popular Pokemon in Japan a few years ago. I have tons of videos that explain how cool its origin is and how it makes total sense, but in my opinion, it was executed terribly. How could anybody prefer this Pokemon when Infernape exists? He's just trying to copy a popular starter Pokemon, yet he's doing it wrong. Even their stats are the same. The fact that this Pokemon exists is ridiculous, and it doesn't look good in motion either. For fighting we have... Sock. Now here's what's funny, I actually like Sock more than Throw, but at least Throw is more monstrous. However, Sock isn't subtle enough to be a Pokemon, especially in the fighting type, because for example, Hariyama is the sumo wrestling Pokemon, but it isn't straight up a sumo wrestler, its clothing looks like part of its body, and it's clearly not a human. Sock is guilty of having the most egregious integration of clothing into its design. It looks like a rock dude who is simply wearing a karate gi, and at least Throw's judo concept is relatively original. However, Sock, being a karate master, falls a bit flat because karate was already part of most fighting type Pokemon techniques. Karate Chop is like the most iconic fighting type move, so what's a new fighting type style that this Pokemon offers? I like this Pokemon, but I just wish it was more demonic like it was originally supposed to be. The worst flying type is... Delibird. This Pokemon's whole deal is the Santa Claus gimmick. It looks appealing enough, but unlike Farfetch'd Stick, this Pokemon's signature technique isn't stab, and actually has a chance of helping the opponent. I'm a big supporter of gimmicks, but not when they actually are a detriment to the Pokemon, unless the Pokemon is already super powerful, like Slacking, whose ability is there to prevent it from killing anybody. Again, it's not like it's an abomination, all the other flying types are at least cool in some way, except for Ducklet. But when it comes down to it, it's the last flying type I would want on my team. So, I mean, that's kinda why it's here. Pretty harsh, honestly. He just wants to give gifts. Nothing wrong with that. The worst grass type is Sunkern. It also happens to be the weakest Pokemon, and no, I'm not counting solo Wishy-Washy. Sunflora is my least favorite grass type, but I think Sunkern is worse objectively, and does anybody else get some freaky vibes from this bodiless creature? And I wish that could be all I have to say, but then I wouldn't really have a point. If I don't think this Pokemon is cute, and it's also not good at battle, its origin isn't anything special either, so what use does it have when it comes to my entertainment? Cause that's what Pokemon is about. It's a game. Even the Pokemon deemed the worst by other people give me some form of enjoyment, and the Sunkern line simply doesn't. For poison we have Trubbish. It's also my least favorite poison type, but simply because I like every other poison type more. Not because I'm offended by this family. I like Garbodor. Even though it's literally trash, I reserve the word garbage for those who are worse than scum, like people who abandon their friends or literal Nazis. Things that have no value whatsoever. But Trubbish has value. I think that if its garbage concept was executed in a more clever way, people would like it more, but till then, it's simply a garbage bag with a face. The worst electric type is Pichu. I love Pichu, it's cute as butts, but any electric type Pokemon that shocks itself isn't going to be in the top tier of electric types, and when its evolved form is more appealing, iconic, and in my opinion, cuter, there is no reason for this baby Pokemon to exist. I gotta lay down the facts, honey. The worst ground type is Nincada. Did you even know this thing was a ground type? I get it, it burrows, but like, other than the fact that it can dig, what other Pokemon incorporates less ground into its design and abilities than Nincada does? It's not bad. Have you seen this thing smile? It's underratedly cute. Look at that. He's a good boy. This thing makes me happy, but would I give a flying furred if this thing lost its ground typing? No. For Psychic, it's Chingling. You see, now it's kinda getting easier. Baby Pokemon aren't the best, and when it comes to a Pokemon that already looks like a baby, why in the world did anybody think it was a good idea to make a weaker Chimecho, instead of giving it an evolved form? Its design isn't bad at all, but Psychic is filled with some freaky and cool looking Pokemon, so why would I ever want a Chingling? Honestly, Chimecho's cuter. That's why Chingling could have been the evolved form of Chimecho. I mean, a bell is louder and more obnoxious than a chime. Am I wrong? Who cares, really? Rock was pretty hard. Jokes aside, it was difficult to come up with, but Probopass is the answer. Even though I kinda like it a lot, it makes way more sense than people give it credit for, and I wouldn't mind using one. But this is a type in which my opinion shouldn't matter, cause I'm actually a huge fan of rock types, and all the unpopular rock types are actually Pokemon that I love. I just may be biased when it comes to rock types. I could be super blind to how much these things suck, so perhaps this Pokemon fails because its origin and concept didn't translate into an appealing design, and I get it. It's here since I seriously believe all the other Pokemon of this type absolutely rock. There, I said it. Ice is... who am I kidding? Jynx. Again, this is another case of, even though I think this Pokemon has a very interesting concept with a design that takes inspiration from so many intriguing places, its execution has failed. It's incredibly clever when you look into why this Pokemon looks the way it does, but here's the thing. The same design would work in a different art style and genre, but it doesn't translate into a good Pokemon. It's not as terrible as people think it is, but in the context of this franchise, this creature is a pretty bad pocket monster. The worst bug type is Scatterbug. This was easy. It was gonna go to an early root bug type cause the ones you catch later in the game are pretty epic. The rest are iconic, cute, cool, have a concept I admire, or are at the very least inoffensive. But this thing is ugly. I mean, perhaps it's another case of an ugly Pokemon becoming beautiful like Feebas, but I know that's not what its concept is. This Pokemon just happens to look disgusting, and doesn't have any of the redeeming qualities other early bug types have, so it's here. But here isn't a bad place, it's nice here. We have some beanbags and apple juice. The worst dragon type is Sliggoo. This is another case of literally every other dragon type is better than this Pokemon. Not only that, I don't dislike any dragon types. They're all pretty great. Sliggoo just so happens to be relatively uninteresting when compared to other dragons, cause on its own, I actually think it's cuter than Goomy, but Goomy has more personality and is somehow iconic. But other than Goomy, it's the least dragony of all the dragons. Being the worst doesn't mean it sucks, it just means that everything else is better. It can roll with the crew, but it can't disrespect the posse and say that it's as good as its homeboys. You get it. For worst ghost type, Sableye wins. If we were to ask what's the Pokemon that gives off the least ghostly vibes, the answer would probably be Decidueye, but considering it's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, I'm not comfortable saying that it's the worst ghost type ever. So what's the second least ghosty ghost? Sableye. It feels too physical and tangible to be a ghost. It's more of a goblin than a ghost, but we don't have to get into that. Ghost is unfortunately another type in which I kinda like every single Pokemon. I mean, that's a fortunate thing, but unfortunate for the purpose of this video. But if I were to ask myself which Pokemon would be my last choice if I wanted a ghost on my team, the answer would be Sableye. For Dark, Alolan Muk takes the cake. I mean, he could have the cake once it already touched it. This one was also tough because when asking which Pokemon doesn't deserve to be a Dark type, I'd answer Absol or Alolan Muk. Because we know that they aren't malicious, they're actually nice guys. But Absol does seem edgy and hides in the darkness, while Alolan Muk is not the easiest to be around on account of its smell. Alolan Persian also could be here because it looks dumb, but now the problem is, its design isn't dumb, and is in fact pretty genius now that it resembles an actual blue shorthair, which are derived from Persian cats. It's also Dark type for one of the most appropriate reasons in all of Dark type history, so it's a well executed Pokemon because it was bred to look stupid. Kinda like modern day Persian cats. Alolan Muk doesn't really deserve the Dark type if the only thing that makes it dark is its stench. Cantonian Muk smells bad too, and Alolan Muk is actually friendlier. And if you think about it, its colors are brighter too, so I may be missing something here. But I'm eager to learn, so if you know a reason, politely tell me in the comment section below. The worst steel type is Wormadam. If we were basing this on which Pokemon looks the least metallic, Lucario would come close, even though it's clearly an amazing Pokemon, so it's not here. But this may be another instance in which I'm ignorant on the topic, cause I don't understand why Trash Cloak Wormadam is pink and doesn't even remotely look like it's a steel type. I mean, I get that trash could be pink, but whatever makes garbage pink, like strawberry milkshake or gum, isn't made of steel. I'm not confused by why it's a steel type, and I'm not asking why it's pink. I'm asking what kind of steel-related trash is pink. And even if it had a reason, it still isn't the most appealing Pokemon. Burmy is way more memeable to me. And the worst fairy type is Granbull. It just doesn't embody anything that the fairy type represents. I get it's literally the fairy Pokemon, but it should have stayed normal. I also get that it could be based on a mythical dog from Celtic lore, but none of that comes across in the design or concept. But then again, it's kind of the point of this Pokemon, since it's based on a creature that looks frightening, but is shy and friendly, like Granbull. And I'm not saying that a fairy type can't be masculine, it just has to do something fairy related. If it can at least look like one, I'm not picking on this innocent dog. I legitimately like this Pokemon more than I used to now that I get why it looks so creepy, but that doesn't mean that it accurately represents the themes of the fairies, and that's why it's here. Not because it's terrible, but because it's the worst at being a fairy. But you can be the best viewer by liking this video, if you enjoyed that is, and subscribe for more. Check the description for the music I use, the t-shirts I made for you guys, and my Patreon where you can donate to get cool rewards like seeing my videos days early, which you can also have by clicking the join button. Please follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you guys very soon.